The county princess was carefree and loved to joke. At the palace banquet, when I had a stomachache from bad food, she screamed, "Miss Jew, I told you to get rid of that bastard child, but you wouldn't listen. Now you've miscarried in front of everyone. What decent man would ever marry you now?" The Empress was furious and ordered me to be beaten to death as a warning to others. On the brink of death, the imperial physician arrived just in time to prove my innocence. Yet the county princess merely pouted in grievance. I was only joking. Who knew she'd be so fragile? Besides, how could palace food possibly cause stomachaches? She must have caught some filthy disease from her wanton behavior. Everyone praised the county princess for her candid charm, while I lay choking on my own blood. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the eve of the palace banquet. Isn't this the renowned Miss Jew, the most talented and beautiful maiden in the capital? Come, sit beside this county princess, so I may bask in your brilliance. When I was reborn, the palace banquet had yet to begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. County Princess Ja Cheng was enthusiastically beckoning me over. All the noble ladies were looking at me with envy, because the lady of Ja Cheng County was the daughter of the illustrious Prince Kang, renowned for his military exploits. She had a bold and straightforward personality. Since returning to the capital, she often treated men as brothers but never showed a friendly face to the noble women of the city. When asked about it, she sighed helplessly. Where there are many women, there is much gossip. They tend to overthink every word. Having spent years on the frontier, I've grown accustomed to being blunt. I simply can't get along with them. Yet, when faced with pampered young noblemen who had grown up surrounded by perfumed powders, sensitive and prone to tears at the slightest trouble, she sighed repeatedly. All beings are equal. If men can be brave and strong, they should also be allowed to show melancholy. I want to be friends with such people, so stop calling him effeminate all the time. When these words spread, the sword-wielding men felt ashamed and said that the county princess of Ja Cheng was extraordinary. A true heroine among women, the frail scholars and delicate young men who loved powder and rouge revered her as a celestial maiden, saying she was unlike ordinary women with their petty sharp tongues. They even composed poems praising her virtues. My personal maidservant wore a delighted expression. "Young mistress, you're the first woman the county princess Ja Cheng has grown close to since returning to the capital. Becoming her friend will surely benefit your marriage prospects." Indeed. Though I am the legitimate daughter of a vice minister's household, my mother passed away early, and my father dotes on his concubine, paying me no attention whatsoever. With someone to rely on, my days would be easier. But Ja Cheng was no immortal who could save me from suffering, but a demon determined to take my life. Seeing me remain still, Ja Cheng frowned slightly. Clearly, he was about to say those words again. "Miss Jew, I thought you were different from other sheltered young ladies. Straightforward and unconstrained. How could you be so coy and unrefined? Does sitting close to you steal your talent? You're truly petty." In my past life, Ja Cheng's words were simply too vulgar to be spoken in polite company. Humiliated, my face burned crimson as I hastily explained that I had never meant any such thing. Yet all that answered me was the scornful laughter of the men present. "So much for the capital's #1 talented maiden," they jeered. "Nothing but an overrated country bumpkin with petty airs. Indeed, what use is talent? Every scholar in the Hanlin Academy surpasses her in learning. A woman's modest literary gifts exist solely to please her husband. Who would dare marry such a petty, narrow-minded creature? She'd surely turn the household upside down." A jealous, venomous shrew. The ladies, fearing to offend Ja Cheng and wary of being lumped with my petty kind by the men, gave me a wide berth. Even the prince who once favored me frowned and ordered the lychees specially sent to my table to be taken away. In an instant, I became the pariah of the entire banquet. Embarrassment, anger, and helplessness enveloped me. This was a palace banquet. I couldn't leave without reason. Nor did I want to reveal my vulnerability and become a laughingstock. I struggled to endure until the banquet ended and returned home with dignity, only to be suddenly seized by unbearable abdominal pain. At that very moment, Ja Cheng covered her mouth and screamed, "Miss Jew, I told you long ago to get rid of that bastard child, but you wouldn't listen. Now you've miscarried in front of everyone. What decent young man would ever want to marry you now?" The shrill voice cut through the music, drawing all eyes in the room. I quickly denied the accusation and scolded Ja Cheng for spreading such vile slander to tarnish my reputation. But Ja Cheng laughed in mock surprise. "Oh, Miss Jew, if I'm lying, then why is there blood on the back of your skirt? Don't tell me it's your monthly courses. I clearly saw you drinking wine and eating ice cream earlier." I looked down. The skirt was indeed stained red, and I truly wasn't menstruating. Ja Cheng's father had distinguished military achievements and was in theft as a prince of a different surname. Now that the border was in turmoil, Prince Kang personally went to the frontier again. He was a meritorious hero of the entire dynasty. The current empress has given birth to the eldest prince, but the emperor, in the prime of his life, is unwilling to relinquish power and often supports other princes to counterbalance the eldest prince. To secure the support of Prince Kang, the empress intends to arrange a marriage between the eldest prince and Ja Cheng. To demonstrate her favor towards Ja Cheng, the empress had me seized before the imperial physician could arrive. The heavy, spiked board struck my body. The pain so intense it made breathing difficult. At the brink of death, the imperial physician finally arrived and confirmed I was not pregnant. I thought justice would be served, but Ja Cheng merely pouted in feigned grievance. It was just a joke. Who knew she'd be so fragile? Besides, how could palace food cause stomachaches? She must have caught some filthy disease from her shameless behavior. The empress laughed and called Ja Cheng a little rascal, showing no intention of punishing her. Everyone sees the truth clearly. To please the empress, they tacitly smiled and comforted Ja Cheng, saying she was kind and pure, that I couldn't take a joke, and that my fate was as fragile as paper. Only the imperial physician tried his utmost to save me, but Ja Cheng suddenly cried out that she was dizzy and forcibly summoned him away. In truth, I could have survived. After all, this was a palace banquet. How could the death of a minister's daughter be easily dismissed? The empress ordered my father to bring me home, but fearing to offend Prince Kang behind Ja Cheng, my father hastily disowned me, claiming I had behaved improperly and tarnished the Ju family's reputation, thus being expelled from the clan. As I lay convulsing alone in a pool of blood, Ja Cheng gave me a provocative smile. What capital's top talented lady? You're not even fit to fetch my foot-washing water. Enjoy showing off, do you? I'll let you have your fill of it. Consciousness returned, and I looked at Ja Cheng's scheming face. The corners of my lips curved. You resent me for stealing your limelight, don't you? This lifetime. I'll make sure you become the most radiant person at the entire palace banquet. Though deeply honored by the county princess's favor, all banquet seating has been prearranged. For me to sit beside you would mean usurping another's place and disregarding palace protocol, even with my utmost admiration for the county princess, nor would I dare to be so presumptuous and ill-mannered. With these words, I folded my hands and bent my knees slightly, offering a graceful and respectful bow. The crowd froze momentarily before erupting into murmurs, as expected of the capital's foremost talented lady. Such noble bearing indeed. The imperial palace is no common tea-house or tavern. How could anyone forget decorum here? Indeed, if they had any thoughts, why not meet privately? Why insist on doing it at the palace banquet? Moreover, taking seats arbitrarily before others arrive, isn't that just bullying? In the past, Ja Cheng had always elevated her own grace and free-spiritedness by stepping on others, but now, not only did she fail to trample me, she ended up becoming my foil instead. Her face turned livid with rage, and she swatted away the wine a maid handed to her. Glaring at me as if she wished to devour me whole, I smiled, so quick to anger. Is that all you've got? You'll suffer more later. Just as in her past life, the empress appeared with the imperial consorts and publicly bestowed the Ja Cheng hairpin upon her before the assembled crowd. Ja Cheng basked in everyone's favoritism towards her, giving me a sinister smile. I had been secretly observing her and easily noticed her exchanging a glance with the serving maid. In my past life, before the imperial physician was forcibly summoned away by Ja Cheng, he had whispered one sentence to me: "Young lady, it's not food poisoning, you've been poisoned. This toxin comes from the seeds of the foreign moonshell grass, ground into powder, colorless and odorless. Once it enters through the mouth or nose, it causes bleeding from a woman's lower body." Gazing at the golden wine flask shimmering with rippling light, an idea quickly formed in my mind. At every banquet, noble ladies would come forth to showcase their talents. In my past life, I had my composure shattered by Ja Cheng's barrage of mockery. Later, Ja Cheng provoked me with words, urging me to go on stage and dance. Confident in my skills, I obliged, but before I could even step down, Ja Cheng rushed to my side and began performing a sword dance. With sweeping, unrestrained movements, she used her sword to tear my clothes and drove me off the stage, as I stumbled and fell to the ground in disgrace. She hypocritically remarked that my demeanor was overly delicate, that I was born into privilege and knew nothing of the people's hardships. Unlike her, a true heroine. When she spoke again, I narrowed my eyes and smiled. Since the county princess wishes to see this humble subject dance, I shall comply with your gracious request, with sleeves unfurled, legs whirling, and back arching, every movement that should have been delicate instead erupted with overwhelming martial ferocity. As if standing on a battlefield, this frail and slender frame remained unafraid of wind and snow, defying formidable foes. Before the dance could conclude, cheers erupted from all around. Ja Cheng refused to be outdone. Before I could finish my dance, he rushed forward with his sword just as he had in our past life. Each strike was vicious, aiming to tear my garments and drive me off the stage, yet my movements grew ever more nimble. My wide sleeves fluttering like celestial wings as if I were ascending to immortality. From below the stage, I heard wave after wave of admiring praise. Ja Cheng was furious beyond measure, slashing his sword to sever my sleeve. The thin fabric brushed past her cheek before fluttering to the ground. She recoiled in disgust, but as she moved to hook my collar with her sword, I had already conceded and stepped back. Ja Cheng looked down at me with undisguised contempt. Her expression dripping with disdain. Can't even stand steady while dancing. What a disgrace. The so-called top noble lady of the capital seems quite undeserving of the title. Yet I curved my lips into a smile, having already scattered the moonshell grass powder. Why should I remain on the stage any longer? Before stepping onto the stage, I had drenched my sleeves with wine. That malicious strike from Ja Cheng had already successfully plunged her into an abyss of eternal damnation. Once the appointed hour arrives, she'll have no choice but to take that spotlight whether she wants it or not. After I sat back down, contrary to expectations, Ja Cheng didn't receive the praise one might have imagined. Who would have thought that an ordinary maiden's dance could be so sharp yet possess an ethereal beauty? As if an immortal had descended to the mortal realm. Sword dances, not only are they lacking in beauty, they're just flashy moves, soft and weak, after all. Dancing should be left to the pampered young ladies of the capital. The county princess falls short. Ja Cheng trembled with anger, lips quivering, and once again put on an affected air. The borderlands are harsh and bitter. Here, even a full meal is a luxury. Who has the time to appreciate dance? Let alone the fortune to practice it? I'm not like Miss Jew, living in luxury without knowing the hardships of common folk. Every day I'm either patrolling or caring for the people. Please excuse my shortcomings. The crowd was quickly swayed by her words, and soon everyone was speaking in her defense. Indeed, pursuits like music, chess, calligraphy, painting, dancing, and needlework are for ladies confined to inner chambers. Where would a heroine find time to learn such things? The Empress, visibly moved, took off her bracelet and handed it to Ja Cheng. Good child, now that you've returned to the capital, do whatever you wish and learn whatever you desire. I believe that in time, you too shall become one of the capital's renowned beauties. Having turned the tables, Ja Cheng was quite pleased and said with sarcastic glee, I dare not aspire to be a capital beauty. Just now, I merely accidentally ruined Miss Jew's dress, and she left the stage with a cold face. Showing no sportsmanship, with such pettiness, if I were to truly surpass her someday, she'd probably make a scene of life and death. The crowd burst into laughter. Yes, one must have integrity and moral courage in life. Miss Jew retreats without a fight. Even quitting a dance midway, truly lacking in generosity and magnanimity. Such humiliation. Naturally, I lowered my head and picked up my wineglass to drink, masking my desolation. Ja Cheng's eyes instantly lit up. His gaze at me was as if looking at a foolish, lifeless object. I curved the corners of my lips, secretly calculating the time, then clutched my stomach, furrowed my brows, and put on a vigorous performance of having eaten something bad. Just as I was about to excuse myself and leave, Ja Cheng sneered, then let out a sharp cry. Miss Jew, I told you long ago to get rid of that bastard child, but you wouldn't listen. Now that you've miscarried in front of everyone. What respectable young man would still be willing to marry you? The music suddenly stopped, and countless pairs of eyes turned toward me. The court musician tactfully took her zither and withdrew, meeting the Empress's piercing gaze. I naturally hastened to deny it. County princess, what nonsense are you speaking? When have I ever been pregnant? Moreover, today is our first encounter. How could there have been any earlier conversation as you claim? My character is well known to everyone in the capital. Moreover, having illicit relations with others and conceiving a child out of wedlock would, at best, ruin one's reputation, and at worst, lead to being punished by the pig cage ordeal. Everyone chimed in. This concerns a young lady's virtue. County princess, you mustn't jest. How could Miss Jew possibly be pregnant? Ja Cheng merely stared at me, his dark eyes gleaming like a fox on the hunt. Whether you've committed adultery and are pregnant, you know perfectly well in your heart. As for how I know, naturally I heard it from others. Who would have thought that Miss Ju, who appears so pure and flawless, is actually a promiscuous woman with loose morals in private? Ja Cheng's confident words made everyone waver, especially that absurd phrase, heard it from others, as if it were a real matter, just like in my past life, with a calm expression and resolute tone. She nailed me to the pillar of shame without any evidence. I desperately tried to explain, but she only needed to say one thing. Is that so, Miss Ju? If you claim I'm talking nonsense, then why is there blood on the back of your skirt? Don't tell me it's your monthly cycle today. I clearly saw you drinking wine and eating ice cream earlier. The way everyone looked at me changed instantly. Even the usually fair-minded Empress was seething with rage. Before the imperial physician could even make a diagnosis, I was already branded as unchaste and impure. This time, she still uttered these words with that same firm yet disdainful tone, but I countered, what does blood signify? Just because it's on my clothes means it's mine, and even if it were, so what? Couldn't I simply be ill? Must any trace of blood behind a woman's skirts always be proof of filth and impurity? Ja Cheng was taken aback by my retort, his expression darkening. Yet he spoke with unwavering determination. Exactly, women are different from men. When a woman bleeds below, there are only a few possible reasons. Don't try to brush it off with talk of illness. I've consulted physicians. Only women who've lost their virginity contract those filthy diseases. Shame on you. A noble woman of the capital, raised with proper etiquette, yet so devoid of feminine virtue. You disgust me. Having vented his fury, Ja Cheng lifted his chin with an air of righteous indignation. Words are useless. Dare you stand up and let everyone see if there's blood on your skirt? I'm not doing this to make things difficult for you. A man's path to fame and fortune is hard enough as it is, but to have a wife who doesn't uphold her virtue, stirring up trouble at home, I'm helping them root out these rotten-hearted women early, so they can focus on achieving greatness without distraction. The noble women, who had been watching with calm amusement moments before, now paled with shock, yet every man present was moved by Ja Cheng's words. They all praised her as a good woman. The looks directed at me grew increasingly disdainful. A chill ran through my entire body, not because I feared the men's gazes, but because of the harm inflicted by my fellow women. Though she held the status of a county princess, wielding power beyond the reach of ordinary women, she chose not to aid those in weaker positions. Instead, she oppressed other women to curry favor with men. Ja Cheng, thinking I was afraid, challenged me. Ju Dingy, you dare not let everyone see. Does this mean you admit to impurity and betraying your future husband? Seeing my continued indifference, she angrily strode toward me. She grabbed my arm roughly and yanked me up. I looked at her and asked one last time, but if a woman bleeds below, does that make her unclean? Ja Cheng let out a scornful laugh without hesitation. That's right. I couldn't help but laugh. County princess, since you are so impure and have wronged your future husband, how dare you swagger about in public? Why not prove your integrity by death? Ja Cheng froze. Ju Dingy, what nonsense are you talking about? I just smiled at her without saying a word, furious with embarrassment. She shoved me away, but behind me was nothing at all. She was utterly astonished. How could this be? It must be the thickness of the clothes. With that, she began to strip off my garments. Miss Jiang, the daughter of the Minister of War, suddenly let out a derisive laugh. So even a noble lady like you gets her monthly courses? I thought you were no different from men. The way you go around with your arms around their shoulders calling them brothers. Ja Cheng flew into a rage, her face twisting with contempt. What nonsense are you spouting? I'm a woman, of course I have my courses, but my mind is pure. My conduct spotless and my actions honorable. My monthly flow has long ceased, unlike you filthy creatures. At Ja Cheng's words, all the women present frowned slightly. The man considers a woman's menstruation unclean, and everything related to menstruation is labeled as filthy. Female physicians who treated women were degraded to the lowest class of midwives and herbalists. Countless women lost the chance for treatment, dying with bitter regret, yet they forget they themselves were born of women. Ja Cheng, though a woman herself, also viewed menstruation as shameful. How utterly tragic. Meanwhile, men would watch with wide eyes, their faces full of admiration. Menstruation, the filthiest water from the foulest ditch. Women can't even enter the ancestral hall during their periods, which shows how disgraceful it is. Indeed, I've heard that some practicing nuns eventually cease their monthly courses. The county lady has reached this stage without even practicing, which truly shows her purity. Flattered by the men's admiration, Ja Cheng was quite pleased, tilting her neck proudly. I grew up on the frontier, helping the common people and sharing their joys. Naturally, I'm different from other women. Miss Jiang raised an eyebrow. So, the county princess won't be having her monthly courses today? Ja Cheng was furious and snapped viciously. Of course not. But Miss Jiang continued. Then why is there blood spreading behind the county princess? Ja Cheng sneered. What nonsense. I'm virtuous and righteous, free-spirited, not like the rest of you. But the men who had just been flattering her all fell silent, looking at her with strange expressions. Ja Cheng finally sensed something was amiss and turned to look. Her pupils suddenly dilated, as if in utter shock. Impossible. How could I be menstruating? Could the physician have? She hesitated to speak. Yet I sensed something odd. Why was she so certain her menses wouldn't come? After all, though a woman's menstrual cycle follows the moon's ebb and flow, not every woman's is so regular. Just like in my past life, I could confidently say it wasn't my monthly cycle, because mine had just ended a few days prior. But her situation was clearly different. If the county princess insists it couldn't possibly be her monthly cycle, then what is this blood behind her, covering my mouth? I feigned surprise. Could it be that the county princess became pregnant out of wedlock and, being unrestrained in today's feast, miscarried? Or perhaps she's already ruined her health and contracted some filthy disease? Ja Cheng froze for a moment before exploding in rage. What nonsense are you spouting? I'm pure and blameless. How could such things be possible? I tilted my head innocently. But didn't the county princess just say that when a woman has blood below, she is unclean? Has the county princess forgotten? Among the noble ladies, someone couldn't help but let out a giggle. That's right. We all heard the county princess's words clearly just now. How come when it comes to the county princess herself, there's a different standard? The men who had been flattering Ja Cheng moments ago exchanged awkward glances, their gazes now filled with undisguised disdain as they looked at her. I thought the county princess would be different. But it turns out she's just like all the other women in the capital, utterly dull. After all, she's still a woman, no matter how different she seems, she's just a housewife in the end. The sage was right, women and petty men are indeed hard to deal with. These were the men Ja Cheng was so eager to please. They never respected her. Her so-called adoration was merely their amusement with a novelty. I couldn't help but sigh, yet Ja Cheng still directed his accusations at the woman. I am a county princess, a remarkable woman who aids the common people and cares for the world. My father is a hero who defends Daeong. Naturally, I'm nothing like you parasites in the capital who cling to your husbands and idle away your lives. How ridiculous. What kind of thick-skinned person could boast about themselves to such an extent? Though we're all women, she acts as if she's the only rare heroine in the world, while the rest of us are just common. Frivolous women confined to the inner chambers. How dare you? A furious shout rang out. Even though the Empress had intended for Ja Cheng to be her daughter-in-law, she couldn't tolerate Ja Cheng's outrageous words any longer. After all, she too relied on her husband for survival. Meeting the Empress's icy gaze, Ja Cheng shrank her neck slightly but then stiffened it, refusing to show weakness. Was I wrong? The great Yong's peace and prosperity exist because of my father, as his daughter. I'm naturally different from these common folk. The Empress angrily overturned the teacup with a slap and sneered. Indeed, the county princess is a rare heroine unmatched in this world, while this palace and all the women of Great Yong are mere vulgar creatures. Only then did Ja Cheng realize her mistake and hurried to explain. Your Majesty rules the inner palace as the model for all women under heaven, naturally not a vulgar creature. This subject was referring to those women who are content to stay in the inner chambers, knowing only how to please their husbands and vie for favor among concubines. They are the true vulgar creatures. Looking at the Queen's livid face, I almost couldn't hold back my laughter. Everyone in the capital knew that the current Queen was notoriously jealous. Ja Cheng, in his attempt to be unconventional, had been elevating himself while flattering the Queen. Unaware that he had already struck a nerve with her, however, the Empress, considering Prince Kang behind Ja Cheng, did not punish her severely. She merely ordered Ja Cheng to copy texts on women's virtues and precepts, and confined her to the residence. But Ja Cheng showed no gratitude. What wrong have I done? Why must I be punished? Shame on you as an empress, to be no different from those petty-minded women. I've truly misjudged you. I couldn't help but facepalm. I wonder how the Prince of Kang usually indulges her, that she dares to challenge the mother of a nation. Watching the Empress's tightly pressed lips and trembling fingertips, I took a deep breath and bowed deeply. Lady Ja Cheng has behaved improperly, offended the Empress, and violated the dignity of the imperial family. If she is lightly punished, others will surely follow her example. How then can the imperial family maintain its dignity? I beseech your majesty to severely punish Lady Ja Cheng. Seeing this, Miss Jiang also bowed deeply. I beseech your majesty to severely punish Lady Ja Cheng. The other noble ladies all bowed their heads in reverence. Ja Cheng clenched her fists in anger. You lowly wretch, my father is Prince Kang, and I am a county princess, how dare you? Watching Ja Cheng's unbridled arrogance, the Empress wore a complicated expression, likely recalling Ja Cheng's insolence after marrying the crown prince. He immediately intended to teach Ja Cheng a lesson. What does being a county princess matter? I am the Empress, the mother of the nation. Since your father isn't here, I shall educate you in his stead. County Princess Ja Cheng has behaved improperly, violated feminine virtues, and defied her superiors. Guards, give her 20 strokes with the rod. Even as the palace attendants seized her, Ja Cheng still failed to grasp the reality of the situation. Screaming and shouting, the board came down on her without mercy. Only then did she come to her senses and hurriedly begged for mercy. I have not committed adultery, nor do I have any foul disease. I was falsely accused by villains. I beg your majesty to investigate clearly. They watched as she wailed in agony. I couldn't help but laugh. Since you're innocent, why didn't you speak up earlier? County Princess, Ja Cheng finally came to her senses. It's you, you vile wretch, who harmed me. What have you done to me, your majesty the Empress? This humble subject is innocent. It was Ju Dingy who drugged and framed me. Please summon the imperial physician at once. The physician will surely prove my innocence. The queen was determined to humble her pride and didn't even glance her way. Had she requested the imperial physician at the start of this farce, the queen might have granted her some dignity for Prince Kang's military influence. Even if she accused me of harming her, the queen would have given her that concession and punished me. But she was too arrogant and overbearing, believing herself superior to all others. Now that she had angered the Empress, how could the Empress possibly help her? Ja Cheng glared at me with venom in her eyes. Ju Dingy, you vile wretch, if you have even a shred of conscience left, go tell everyone it was you who drugged me, that you're the one who ruined me. Otherwise, once I leave the palace, I swear I'll make sure you die. I crouched down before her, utterly astonished. My lady, how can you be so foolish? Even now you fail to understand that the beating you received has nothing to do with whether you were bleeding down there or not. It was clearly you who harmed me. What wrong have I done? I looked at her with pity in my eyes. Your wrong lies in your arrogance. In treating other women as less than human, though a woman herself, she acted like a ghostly accomplice in harming other women. The Empress ultimately showed mercy, stopping the flogging after just a few strikes and summoning the imperial physician to examine Ja Cheng, taking Ja Cheng's pulse. The physician frowned slightly. The county lady's pulse indicates poisoning, which caused the bleeding below. Tears welled up in Ja Cheng's eyes as she said, I told you I was framed. She pointed at me again. In the palace, only Miss Ju has had contact with me. I beg your majesty to stand up for me. I showed no fear and bowed deeply. This matter concerns a maiden's reputation. I implore the Empress to investigate thoroughly. The Empress stared at me and Ja Cheng, frowning slightly. I knew she had already decided to sacrifice me to achieve her goal, slapping Ja Cheng first, then offering a sweet date afterward. I recalled the fate I met in my past life. I quickly said, the imperial palace is heavily guarded. For someone to poison the county princess, they must have bribed a palace maid. The inner palace has strict rules. If palace servants can be so easily bought, who knows what conspiracy lies behind this? This matter concerns the foundation of the state. Only by handing it over to the Ministry of Justice for thorough investigation can we reassure the people. Ja Cheng panicked instantly and hurriedly waved her hands, saying to let it go. After all, the poison she administered was meant to bring me down. She never even considered the aftermath. As Ja Cheng was helped away by the palace attendants, she glared at me with venom in her eyes. Ju Dingy, how dare you harm me? Just you wait, this isn't over between us. I knew all too well that Ja Cheng never forgot a grievance. I merely held the title of Kyoto's foremost talented woman, yet she sought to utterly ruin my reputation and have me die a miserable death. Now I've incurred such deep enmity with her, she's likely already devised a vicious plan to leave me without even a grave to bury my corpse. Sure enough, when I went up the mountain to worship Buddha, she surrounded me with a band of mountain bandits. Ju Dingy, did you ever imagine this day when you plotted against me at the Palace Banquet? Brothers, this is the capital's most talented maiden, a gift for you. Remember, leave her alive. I want to see her disheveled on the streets by dawn. I stared at her and asked coldly, this is the Emperor's domain, and I'm the daughter of the Minister of Justice, a noblewoman of official standing. How dare you treat me this way? Do you hold no regard for His Majesty and the Empress? Ja Cheng covered his mouth and chuckled. You harmed me first. I'm just here to collect what's owed, not to take your life. What can anyone do to me? Besides, the Great Yong's peace and prosperity are all thanks to my father. His Majesty owes my father such a great debt that he'd be rushing to reward me. How could he possibly punish me over someone as insignificant as you? Hearing this, I curved my lips into a smile and strode swiftly into the mountain woods. Ja Cheng laughed until he couldn't straighten his back. This idiot ran into the woods, saving us the trouble of being seen and causing unnecessary complications. Hurry up and chase after him. Before long, the bandits told Ja Cheng they'd found me. Ja Cheng swaggered forward to witness my miserable fate, yet I stood there calmly and respectfully. Behind me was His Majesty, who had come to the temple in plain clothes to worship the Buddha. Ja Cheng, far away at the border, would not know that before the current emperor ascended the throne, he had been betrayed by his own brother, forced to wander the countryside, and was taken in by a peasant woman. Later, that peasant woman died protecting His Majesty. Pierced by countless arrows right in this very grove, at this time every year, His Majesty would travel incognito to the mountain forests and visit the nearby temple to offer incense and light lamps. Having offended Ja Cheng, how could I be foolish enough to go out openly? She didn't even consider that. Ja Cheng, do you think that my reign depends entirely on your father, that without him, I cannot sit securely on this throne? Or perhaps your father, Prince Kang, believes that without him, I cannot hold this kingdom steady. Ja Cheng turned deathly pale and immediately knelt down. No, Your Majesty, this subject's daughter would never dare harbor such intentions. The emperor gave a cold laugh. Is that so? Yet we heard everything perfectly clear just now. Ja Cheng still wanted to argue, but the emperor had already turned away in displeasure. Considering your youth, I shall not lower myself to your level, but this temperament of yours truly needs mending. I have a son, gentle by nature, devoted to Buddhism since childhood, who now recites sutras for our ancestors at the imperial mausoleum. You shall marry him and cultivate your character together. The 9th prince, born to a palace maid, had his face scarred by candle flames in childhood mischief. Despite the imperial physician's careful treatment, his face bore horrifying marks. From then on, his temperament changed drastically, becoming cruel and vicious. Such a person naturally didn't go to the imperial mausoleum to pray voluntarily, but was exiled there by His Majesty. In the past, with Ja Cheng's status, she would never have been allowed to marry a ruined man, but her actions had already made the emperor wary of Prince Kang. Keeping her was merely to hold her as a hostage. Even if Prince Kang returns victorious this time, I fear he won't meet a good end. After the emperor left, Ja Cheng no longer carried her former air of triumphant confidence. With a deathly pale face, she screamed that she was a county princess, the daughter of the illustrious Prince Kang, who dared to bully her. As the one who reduced her to such a state, I naturally became the target of her profound hatred. But I'm no fool, I had already asked the emperor for guards in advance. Ja Cheng trembled with hatred, his eyes tinged with blood-red veins, yet he could only watch as the guards escorted me away. Back at the residence, I let out a long sigh of relief, thinking my fate had changed for this lifetime. To everyone's surprise, the eldest prince actually demanded to marry Ja Cheng as his principal consort. What a shameless wretch! She prattles on daily about being a heroine among women, different from the common powder and paint ladies of the inner chambers. Yet turns around and climbs into the eldest prince's bed. The young lady of the Minister of Personnel's household had grown up with the eldest prince since childhood. Everyone tacitly assumed the eldest prince would become crown prince, and naturally, the young lady would be the future crown princess. But now that Ja Cheng is to marry the eldest prince, her marriage prospects have collapsed, and she has become the laughingstock of the entire city. I sipped my tea pensively and said, after the Palace Banquet incident, Ja Cheng's reputation was tarnished, and she angered His Majesty, being betrothed to the 9th prince, so why would the crown prince defy the pressure to marry her as his principal consort? Could it be because of Prince Kang? Miss Jiang abruptly stood up, nearly crushing her handkerchief in her grip. So that's why my father suddenly urged me to befriend Ja Cheng. It's all because Prince Kang won the battle, now that Prince Kang hasn't returned yet. That wretch is already so arrogant. If we wait until he comes back to court, won't she be riding roughshod over us? I also sighed. Indeed, we can't just sit here waiting for death. As the words fell, a loud noise erupted from the tea house. Ja Cheng came striding toward me with an imposing entourage of guards. I urged Miss Jiang to leave first, but she remained worried about me. I said to her, in dealing with enemies, psychological tactics are paramount. Although the Palace Banquet damaged Ja Cheng's reputation, the Empress cleared her name. But what if her conduct was truly improper from the start? After Miss Jiang left, Ja Cheng kicked open the chamber door, looking down at me from above. Bitch, didn't expect me to stay in the capital, did you? Watching the guards closing in step by step, I pretended to be frightened. My father is a fifth-rank vice minister, a court official. If you dare lay a hand on me, he will never let this matter rest. Ja Cheng remained utterly unfazed. So what? We'll just eliminate him along with you. Even though I was well acquainted with Ja Cheng's arrogance, this still took me aback. Yet these words still left me utterly shocked. The guard, being the first prince's man, also hurriedly advised Ja Cheng not to act on impulse if this matter reached the emperor. His Majesty would never let her off lightly. Recalling the emperor's words in the forest that day, Ja Cheng shrank her neck slightly before leaving. She shot me a vicious glare. You're just relying on being an official's daughter, aren't you? Let's see how arrogant you can be once your father's gone. I never expected Ja Cheng to act so swiftly. The next day after court adjourned, my father didn't return home for a long time. When he finally came back, he was carried in. The Ministry of Justice claimed my father had been targeted by enemies seeking revenge, but I understood this was the Crown Prince's greeting gift for Ja Cheng. Because the one who filled my father's vacated vice minister position was from the Crown Prince's maternal family, my concubine mother thought my father had gotten involved in factional struggles and offended the Crown Prince. She somehow obtained a letter of divorce, and within days, she secretly left with my half-sister, taking gold, silver, and valuables. The residence quickly emptied. The maidservants urged me to make plans for myself soon. I laughed. What else is there to plan, of course? We'll hang firecrackers to celebrate. Ja Cheng had no time to deal with me before the rumors spread throughout the city. The capital was abuzz with talk of her improper behavior at the border, entangled with multiple men, ruining families, and tarnishing her reputation. What's more, she became involved in an ambiguous relationship with an enemy general and was captured by the general's wife, who led troops to seize her, imprisoning her for several days. It was only through the intervention of Prince Kang that she was rescued and brought back. When she returned, Ja Cheng was covered in wounds, and from then on, she could no longer bear children. I knew this was the handiwork of Miss Jiang. The royal family cannot have a principal consort who is unable to bear children, especially since Ja Cheng's reputation has already been tarnished beyond repair. To secure Prince Kang's military power, the Crown Prince overruled all objections and married Ja Cheng as a secondary consort. The principal consort was to be Miss Jiang, yet Minister Jiang suddenly produced a marriage contract, claiming Miss Jiang had already been betrothed to another family days prior. That's right. I no longer wish to marry the Crown Prince. Miss Jiang said these words the moment we met. I was somewhat surprised. Miss Jiang smiled faintly, for the sake of profit. Even someone as despicable as Ja Cheng could be welcomed through the door. If I were to marry him in the future and lose my usefulness, how could I possibly survive? Moreover, Miss Jiang paused. Prince Kang cannot possibly return alive. The Crown Prince no longer stands a chance in the succession struggle. Minister Jiang, who oversees the Ministry of War and is a close confidant of the Emperor, must have received some inside information. I said no more and returned to my residence to prepare evidence of Ja Cheng's plot against my father. Sure enough, a few days later, news arrived that Prince Kang had suffered a crushing defeat against the enemy forces, only to be ambushed and killed by the remnants of the enemy army on his way back to the capital. Originally, even in death, Prince Kang should have been remembered with a reputation for loyalty and righteousness. However, the accompanying Deputy General produced evidence that Prince Kang had negotiated with the enemy to rescue Ja Cheng when she was captured by the enemy general's wife. This was precisely why the enemy forces escalated from border harassment to full-scale invasion, capturing several cities in rapid succession. The Emperor was furious, imprisoning all of Prince Kang's family members and sentencing them to execution after autumn. Naturally, this included Ja Cheng. Even the Crown Prince was implicated. Though he hadn't yet established connections with Prince Kang, he was arbitrarily enfeoffed as a prince and exiled to a desolate wasteland. The Empress lost her authority to oversee the 6 palaces and was confined to her quarters, likely on the verge of being deposed. As for me, the orphaned girl whose family was destroyed by Ja Cheng and the Crown Prince for their selfish desires, I naturally received the Emperor's favor, bestowed the title of County Princess to live in wealth and comfort. At the tea house, I met Miss Jiang again. She poked my arm sourly. You're truly fortunate to have stumbled upon the title of County Princess, not only gaining freedom in marriage but also the privilege to travel across nations. I raised an eyebrow. If you were to become an orphan, His Majesty, in his boundless benevolence, would surely bestow similar favors upon you. Miss Jiang hastily waved her hands in protest. I smiled, gazing at the sunset on the horizon, rising to step outside. What does it matter if I'm alone? At least I'm happy and free. Who can say this isn't another kind of fulfillment? But this fulfillment was only my own fulfillment. How many women, like my past self, have died beneath the jest of chastity? After returning home, I devoted all my family's wealth to establishing medical clinics, training female physicians, and founding schools for women. I only hope that fewer women in this world will perish from gossip and the exposure of their private lives, even if it's not easy. But I believe, though the path is long and arduous, we will arrive if we keep moving forward.